All right, ladies and gentlemen, on the heels of a pretty crazy finish from Jon Jones at UFC 309 in New York, and I have a special guest joining me here for the post-fight show to react to all the action. In the words of Derek Zoolander, I'm pretty sure there's a lot more to life than being really, really ridiculously good-looking, and this man knows all about it. But in the other words, immortal words of Hansel, that Brett is so hot right now. Brett Okamoto, welcome to Submission Radio, man. Thank you so much for joining me after a crazy day at the office for you, man.
Of course, man. It's like this is like a tradition that you, me, and Casper, and was it Oscar on the very first one, or maybe it was no, Oscar wasn't there for the first one, but it was the Conor McGregor fight, right? And we all sat in
Yeah.
that very small room, and I was nearly on your lap, and man, how time flies, dude. That was 8 years ago now.
Oh, man, I wish I was back in that room with you on my lap. All right, man, let me ask you this. We're on the heels of a pretty impressive Jon Jones finish. Right off the top here, that spinning back heel KO thing that he landed on Stipe at round 3. Is this, where do you rank this as the most impressive Jon Jones finishes of all time?
Yeah, pretty high up there, just in terms of, you don't really see spinning back kicks much in the heavyweight division, and that's what John brings. To not even just the heavyweight division, though. Always he brought it to the light heavyweight division. He had this athleticism and this timing and this ability to recognize when to throw something, and to have the confidence to always throw it. That was something that we said about John since day one. So this was his first knockout since like 2018, and that knockout with Alexander Gustafsson was more like a volume type knockout, if I remember. Like this one, even though there was some volume elements to it, like this was just a kill shot, to Miocic's midsection. So I put it pretty high up there. I think that this is going to go down as one of his more iconic ones. I think that, the guillotine against Lyoto Machida stands out. The head kick against DC stands out. But because this one was at heavyweight against Stipe in New York, I do think that this is going to be one of the first ones you see on his highlight reel for the many years to come.
What did you think about the Stipe that we saw in this fight, man? Obviously, he's a little bit older, but he posed a couple of problems to Jon throughout the fight. He didn't just give up.
For sure. I think that this was a legitimate Stipe. I mean, was it the same Stipe that, this was not prime Stipe, but I also don't think this was a bad Stipe. I would never describe him as that. And, keep in mind that the heavyweight division that 42 is old, but it's also not terribly old. I mean, 42 means something a lot different at heavyweight than it does at, bantamweight, featherweight, lightweight, welterweight. I thought Stipe looked like a real challenge. He came in as the biggest underdog ever in heavyweight title fight history. I didn't think he really struck me as looking like that. Like he came to win the fight. I was having a hard time kind of reading his body language all fight week, but once the fight started, I thought that he was there to win it. I thought that he was throwing, he was putting things behind his punches. He was throwing with purpose. I just thought Jon was very, very, very good, very prepared, very just buttoned up as he as he usually is. So I thought that it was a pretty good Stipe. Not the best Stipe we've ever seen, but I thought I was more drawn to how good Jon looked than anything about how bad Stipe looked.
Here's the thing about Jon, right? Like, we've seen him in some closer performances, like the first Gustafsson fight, the Dominic Reyes fight. There's been a couple of fights where it's kind of close. We didn't get to see that much from Gunn. Obviously, it was impressive the way he was able to finish him. But it's almost like the Jon that we saw today. Like, how would you rate the Jon compared to the Jon in his prime? You could make the argument that he almost showed us a couple of new tricks, and he's as good as ever.
I agree. That's what I thought. I thought that this was just right in line with the best Jon that we've ever seen. And I don't. He's 37. I think if we're talking about, the absolute best Jon we've ever seen, it probably necessarily wasn't this one, but it was right there. It was right there, and it was everything that. Chael, what did you think?
Chael,
where was this Jon on a scale?
Were you just going to do this and not ask me over?
Well, I know. I didn't have to extend an invitation. That you would just come on your own.
This is the worst Jon Jones, logically in this regard, he's been out for 3 years. He's rusty. He's been in there for 2.5 minutes. He's heavier than he usually is, right? I mean, that scale. I remember a time that Mike Tyson weighed into 240 and people ripped their tickets up. They just moved the line into training camp in Hawaii, for example. You know, Jon Jones comes out. He doesn't physically look great. Logically, he just can't be great. Chandler had just fought. Chandler was out 2 years. Jon Jones was out twice that. And not a man alive can beat him. They can't even win a round against him. It is unexplainable how talented he is at this game. That's just the truth.
Chael, one more question for Chael. Can Tom Aspinall beat him? What's your prediction?
Can Tom Aspinall beat him? What is your prediction?
He says he can. I just asked him that same question. One thing that Tom said, Tom gained a confidence being ringside to watch him. He said, I've never watched Jon Jones except on television before. Being ringside, he said he's too slow. He said, I could see everything that he was doing. Now, Tom also told us he had just had a couple of beers. And I got to tell, but it's relevant, right? As funny as it might sound, it is relevant. If that really is true, if Tom thinks he is faster than a 236-pound world champion, it makes me want to see it. One thing that worries me about Aspinall is what other people praise him for, which is he's only been out of the first round one time. People praise him for that. He had to go almost 7 minutes in to finish Andrei Arlovski. I don't like that. I think that's a problem. You're going to end up third and fourth and fifth round. If you're going to find a way to get the jump on Jon Jones, nobody's doing it fast. And I think that's one thing that Jon has. He's tough. He can regroup. He shows up in great shape regardless of his lifestyle. I've never seen anybody out-condition him. I just think it's relevant. I'm going to plant that seed with you now.
Awesome. Thank you, Chael.
Yeah.
The baddest guy in the game. There he is, the American gangster. What do you make of that, though, Brett? I mean, it's been an interesting week for Jon Jones. Me and Luke, we did this video about the comments that he made on the Kevin Iole interview about, you know, Tom Aspinall not doing much for his legacy. And it felt like that interview turned a lot of fans against him during fight week. Like, a lot of people really clung to this, you know, is he ducking Tom? You know, it almost became a bit of a heel because of those comments. What have you made of his stance on Tom? And do you legitimately believe he's trying to avoid a fight with Tom? Or is this just public negotiations to get the UFC to pay him top dollar for this fight if it does happen?
I was pretty certain that he was just avoiding Tom. And I was going to be okay with that. I just thought he was kind of going about it the wrong way. What he was saying is just like, well, why would I take the toughest fight that may not be worth the most money? And I've earned better than that. I've earned the right to pick my shots. And he has. Like, as a fan of the sport, you don't really want to concede that because you want to see the fights that you want to see. But if you just remove sort of that fan emotion and you look at it through his perspective, he was certainly within his right. I mean, obviously he was going to have to vacate the belt because once you have the belt, then you have to fight the challenger, you have to fight the interim champion. But as long as he was going to give the belt up, then yeah, I always kind of agreed that he had the right to choose. But now with everything that happened in the octagon afterwards, I'm kind of thinking that this was all planned, that this was public negotiation. I really did not get that sense during fight week, but because he came out and then said what he did and basically was like, hey, we're going to have conversations about this. And if the conversations go well, then the fans will get what they want. That is, to me, that's not even subtle negotiation. That's wide open right there in negotiation. And I have a hard time believing that just happened to come to Jon in that moment. I think that this was calculated, which kudos to him, man. Very, very, very smart move. I think that everybody wants to see that fight now. Everybody was talking about that fight. Everybody was giving him crap about maybe he didn't want that fight. And now for him to say, okay, maybe I'll take it. If the UFC makes it worth my while, then now all the pressure is on the UFC to make the fight. So I think it was probably calculated on his part.
What's the situation, cage side? Like, I know you were working the event. Did the UFC just not let Tom into the octagon? From what you understand, did he try to get in there after the fight? What was the situation there? Because I know they usually like to build up that next fight by getting the guy in the ring.
I don't think Tom made like a super hard attempt to get in. And I also think that, you know, this is my guess. I don't know this for sure, but there are certain guys where if you get in their octagon shortly after they just want to fight, then they're okay with it and they'll square off with you. And there are certain guys who are going to be very annoyed with that and saying like, this is my moment, so get out of my octagon, you know? And I consider Jon to be maybe more the latter. And so maybe the UFC and even Tom himself thought that in the interest of putting this fight together, let's actually not go in and try to take away from Jon's moment. I think that was probably the smart move. I don't know exactly why it happened, but I think it happened how it should have happened tonight.
Okay, so let me ask you this, right? Do you think Tom Aspinall, Jon Jones happens next? And if not, what does happen next with this heavyweight belt?
I think it happens. I think the UFC sees the fight that it has on its hands. I think the negotiations will be I don't even know how I would describe them. They're going to be negotiations, real negotiations. So like Jon is going to come with a number that he probably, I mean, I would think this is how negotiations go, right? He's going to come with a number that he himself probably doesn't even expect to get. And I think the fight is big enough that that it will come together, that the UFC will budge, that Jon will probably budge off of his number. He'll be happy eventually, and it happens. I really hope so. And I think the fact that the UFC was not able to make Jon Jones Francis Ngannou actually helps the chances of this fight happening, because they don't want to have the same thing happen twice, where the heavyweight fight that everybody wants to see doesn't end up happening. I think the UFC is going to do everything that it feels comfortable with, and even maybe, move that line further than it normally does for a fight like this.
What do you think the fight looks like? Let's say Tom Aspinall fights this version of Jon Jones that we just saw put away Stipe with crazy ninja kicks. What do you think this? Who do you predict to win that fight?
I think Jon will do what he did in the first round of this one, and he'll want to see how Tom is off his back, because that's just something we haven't seen too much before. And Jon likes to have guys on their back and throwing elbows at him. I think that, Jon is smart. Jon does his homework. Jon comes up with good strategies. And I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to watch a Tom Aspinall fight and say, this guy is a handful. He hits with a lot of power and he hits with a lot of speed. And I would prefer not to hang out with that speed, being a 7-year-older guy. Jon is always, if you really think about it, going all the way back to the beginning of his career, has been sort of more of a grappler. I mean, you can go back and of course find him doing absolutely everything. That's what makes him the greatest of all time. But I mean, when he was coming primarily to dominance, it was always his ability to throw guys on their back, like he did with Stipe tonight, in a pretty vicious fashion, and then keep them there and throw elbows. So I think that he'll want to test that out. And but I think it's just going to be, I think it's going to be back and forth, man. I think he's going to have a little bit of success. Maybe he will be able to get Tom down, but it's not going to be easy to keep Tom down. It's not going to be easy to get Tom down. Tom with all of his speed, and Tom is going to know that Jon is looking for that. I think it's going to be a competitive world-class heavyweight fight, and that's why everybody wants to see it.
And by the way, Jon's striking looked real good in this one. The crazy trip that he got on Stipe, the body kicks, all that. He looked so sharp. I got to ask you, man, before we get off the fight, Stipe, right? He's the greatest UFC heavyweight champion thus far. Like Jon Jones is obviously now in the process of potentially beating that. But now that he's retired, he's called it quits. He's a hero. He's a firefighter. He's beaten Daniel Cormier. He's been able to defy the odds with a number of fighters. How would you describe Stipe Miocic's legacy now that it's officially all said and done?
I think as of right now, he's still the greatest heavyweight of all time. Like you said, Jon is gonna maybe potentially have a say in that. Although I still don't know if Jon is going to be long for heavyweight, but you never know. I mean, he is 37. I think he could still fight for another 33 years, and probably do just absolutely fine. A lot of it will depend, obviously, on how a fight with Tom goes, if that fight does happen. But he's in the he's going to be in the very, very top conversation of best heavyweights that we've ever seen in the sport, and carried himself as a champion, won a championship twice, lost it, came back and won it again. He was there during a really fun era, I think, in the heavyweight division. He fought Alistair Overeem. He fought Fabricio Verdum. He fought Daniel Cormier. Now he fought Jon Jones. I mean, that's a solid era. I mean, I know that Tom Aspinall was very worried about, these guys retiring and him looking around and being like, my era is not like that era, and that was a real concern of his. And I think he was absolutely right. I mean, Stipe went through a very tough era, and he was the best out of all of them, so yeah, I mean, Francis Ngannou, I didn't even mention that name, Francis Ngannou, as well. So Yeah, Stipe's place in heavyweight lore is very secure.
Quick break to thank Manscaped and NordVPN and SAILY for bringing you these programs here today. I want to talk about Manscaped first. What? Boom! The Chairman Pro Electric Foil Shaver is here. It is the game-changing tool that brings the luxury of a professional shave right into your home. Whether you're after that daily silky smooth finish or prefer to maintain a rugged 5 o'clock shadow, the Chairman Pro Electric Foil Shaver is your go-to for precision and style every time. Head over to manscaped.com and join over 11 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by using the code word submission for 20% off and free shipping now. And what makes the Chairman Pro so special? Well, what about the skin-safe blade heads? Skin-safe full-blade foil for that close, smooth shave when you're looking to go completely clean. And clean shave isn't your style, that's okay. Just switch to the skin-safe stubble trimmer to keep your stubble looking sharp and polished. Both heads are designed with the skin-safe technology to help reduce razor burn and irritation so your skin feels smooth and comfortable after every single shave. Go to Manscaped right now and use the code word submission. You can use it across the whole website. The Chairman Pro, you can get the Lawnmower 5.0, what about the Beard Hedger, all sorts of great products, 20% off, and you're helping the program, and you get free shipping. That's at Manscaped right now. I also want to welcome SAILY to Submission Radio. What is SAILY? This thing is an absolute game changer. It is a new eSIM service app brought to you by Nord Security, where you can choose several affordable eSIM plans over 160 countries and 8 regions. With SAILY eSIM, you'll always have a connection when needed. If you've ever been lost abroad or badly needed an internet connection with no Wi-Fi spot in sight, you'll understand what a difference a local SIM card can make. An eSIM provides the internet connection wherever you travel and saves you money on roaming fees. All you got to do is have a look at this. You just download the app. Here I am here. I want to travel to Thailand, so I choose that, and boom, it's that simple. All you guys got to do is download the app, go through the prompts, and you guys are sorted. Global and regional plans. You save time. You don't have to wait in line at airports to get a local SIM card. You stay connected. No more wandering around looking for public Wi-Fi. All SAILY eSIM plans are compatible for iOS and Android devices. So what are you waiting for? Download the SAILY app now. Use the code submission. Or click the link in the description, saily.com/submission to get an exclusive 15% off and travel in style with SAILY this festive season. And by the way, guys, while you're traveling in style, why not jump on NordVPN as well? There's exclusive deals right now for Black Friday for all Submission Radio listeners, where you get massive savings plus 4 months extra. That's 4 months extra, and you get that 30-day money-back guarantee. So why not try it today and see the NordVPN difference? And don't forget, you can use one NordVPN account across 10 devices with one single VPN subscription. Don't forget, you can get cheaper prices on things like pay-per-views, airlines, product, all sorts of things, online subscriptions. NordVPN has you covered. Jump on today and go to NordVPN/submission or click the link in the description below. Get that big saving 4-month extra for free thanks to the Black Friday exclusive deal, and jump on now before it's gone. That's NordVPN.com. And now back to the program. Who's the greatest heavyweight right now, in your opinion?
Of all time?
Right now, as it stands, out of the champions, we've got Francis Ngannou, Tom Aspinall, and Jon Jones. Who would you classify as the heavyweight champion?
I have to say Tom. Francis has been out boxing for 2 years. You know, I know he came back and beat Renan Ferreira, but that's Renan Ferreira is good and very dangerous, but he's also not as proven as some of these other guys. Jon just came back and looked absolutely amazing in Stipe, but we hadn't seen Stipe fight in 3 years and hadn't seen him want to fight in 4 years. So Tom has been doing it on a regular basis, and he's been doing it more impressively than anybody else. So Tom is the #1 heavyweight in the world.
And as for Alex Pereira, obviously he's got a lot of work in his division. You know, Uncle Ive is there. But do you see Alex Pereira making this move to heavyweight? Like, a lot of people are saying, all right, listen, if he goes out against Uncle Ive, he loses the title, or for whatever reason, even does beat him, you know, there's money for him at a heavyweight, whether it be against Tom, whether it be against Jones, whether it be against whoever. Do you think we still see that down the line?
Yeah, that's going to happen. Inevitably, one way or another, that's going to happen. It's either going to happen because he keeps winning, and you know, whatever happens with Jon and Tom. I mean, again, I don't know how long Jon is for but either way, whatever happens with Jon and Tom, Alex, if he wins, is a very attractive option, and if he loses, I don't think Alex is going to be fighting for a super long time either. You know, I mean, I think it's not like he's on the verge of retiring, but that's going to happen before he leaves the sport. Like if he's coming off of a loss and he's like, I got a handful left, he's going to try to make history. He's confident at that weight. So yes, he will move up to heavyweight at some point. I don't know exactly under what circumstances, because we don't know, some of the outcomes of these fights. But yeah, we'll see Alex at heavyweight. I'm very convinced of that.
And the thing is, if Jones does fight Aspinall and loses, that Pereira fight is still there. Like, win or lose, like Pereira versus Jones is a great fight. Let's quickly talk about Charles Oliveira's domination over Michael Chandler today. Man, it was crazy. The first 4 rounds, Oliveira was controlling Chandler, out wrestling him, keeping his back, out striking him. And then out of nowhere, 5th round, Chandler comes in and cashes in the money in the bank. And all of a sudden, we're like, whoa, this guy's still around. Oh, we thought he was dead a couple of rounds ago. What was your reaction to the fight? I mean, pretty incredible for Chandler just to come out of nowhere and get that, get some momentum and almost, have a couple of really successful moments in the 5th round.
I mean, I wasn't shocked by it. Like, obviously, all the momentum was on Charles' side, but I mean, these aren't two guys that we're unfamiliar with. We have long histories of Michael Chandler and Charles Oliveira. And Charles, as amazing as he is, and this is one of the reasons why he's so beloved, he gets tagged and he reacts to those shots. He gets hurt. I mean, he gets hurt a lot in his fights. And Michael Chandler is very, very explosive and powerful. So it didn't shock me that even in the 5th round, Chandler was able to hurt him. And then it didn't really shock me, but I actually kind of almost yelled his name, where I was like, oh my God, Chandler, like, you did it again, bro. Like he's hurt and he throws a punch that literally spins him around backwards so that Charles can take his back. And like, I don't have a rooting interest. I'm just like, but Chandler, like, you do it all the time, bro. Like, you do these like self-sabotaging things. But that is like he can't help it. That is the only way he knows how to fight. And it's hasn't worked out well for him in terms of winning some of these close fights against Gaethje and Poirier. Actually, the Gaethje fight wasn't terribly close, but the Poirier fight, and then, the first one with Chandler or the first one with Oliveira, that's just who he is, man. And I think that, obviously he still has the idea of Conor McGregor in his head. And so as disappointed as I'm sure he is about losing this fight, he does have something to fall back on. And that is, that McGregor fight that he still believes is out there for him. But yeah, it was just like, it was like the most Chandler thing, throwing that huge left hand and he just misses it and falls over. And then that momentum was gone, but that's who he is. He given 100 chances, he would do that 100 times.
Do you still think that this McGregor fight happens with Chandler? Like, and by the way, after that performance from like that 5th round, it's good that he came back, because those first 4 rounds, I feel like Chandler lost a bit of steam, but that 5th round kind of saved him. Do you still think Conor McGregor is next for Michael Chandler?
No, I don't at all.
Because I had Beneil Dariush do the live watch along with me. Beneil would love Chandler next. That's a great fight. Yeah.
I mean, Chandler's going to probably hang out and wait and see what gets offered to him and hope for Conor McGregor. I just don't think Conor McGregor is going to fight. And I talked to Chandler about that topic pretty extensively before the fight, and I even asked an odds maker in Vegas to set a line on the likelihood of Conor fighting again, and the book set the odds at -300, no, 3-1 that he will not fight again. And that to me is just like the reason for that being is that what is the point, and this guy has kind of shown his hand, like he's not fighting, but that's why I don't think the fight will happen. But if Conor does come back, I still think it would be against Chandler, but I just don't think he's coming back. So then what that means is that we'll just have to see what the UFC offers Chandler, and he'll have to get excited about something. But yeah, maybe, hopefully, man, we're all wrong and Conor will surprise us and he'll come back. I think he still wants to be a fighter. He wants to be identified as a fighter and he wants to feel like a fighter. I just don't think he wants to go through a camp, but we'll see.
Or even maybe can't even make it through a camp, right? Because he can't seem to stay healthy at his age. Let me ask you this, man. Obviously, Oliveira wants the title fight against Islam. How would you book the lightweight division? I'll be speaking to Dan Hooker tomorrow. people are talking about, maybe Dan versus Gaethje is potentially in the works, but then people are also talking about Dan Hooker versus Max Holloway for the BMF title. And also people are talking about Oliveira versus Max Holloway for the BMF title too. What do you do? What do you think you do with Oliveira next? Do you wait and see what happens with Arman and Islam and potentially give him the rematch with Islam? Or do you give him one of these other fights that could potentially, excite the fans, like that BMF title fight?
Nah, Charles will wait because he deserves the title shot. He had it, and then he lost it because of a cut. And they were going to send him back to Abu Dhabi, which he was willing to do, but I thought that was kind of harsh. I mean, he was the champion, and then he fought Islam in Abu Dhabi, and then they were going to send him back there. So I think now there's an opportunity for him to possibly fight Islam at like International Fight Week next year if Islam beats Arman. So I think Charles will definitely wait. I mean, that fight's only 2 months away. And Hooker will fight Gaethje. I think Poirier will fight Max Holloway. And I still kind of think Beneil Dariush will fight Benoit Saint-Denis. But I'm not sure about that. But I'm pretty sure about all the other ones. I'm pretty sure it's going to be Hooker, Gaethje, and Poirier will fight Max in his retirement fight sometime next summer, hopefully in Louisiana.
Dude, that's a great. You know what? You put together some great fights. You've got me excited. Hopefully, what about a one-night tournament? That could also be good. But unfortunately, I don't think that would happen. Let me ask you this then: if it is Islam Oliveira 2, how different do you think that fight would look? If you had to sort of predict it, I mean, Oliveira does look like he's getting better, and he's still as dangerous as ever.
I mean, all the problems all the stylistic problems that Charles had with Islam still exist, like the very physical grappling style, but you kind of saw that tonight that his grappling style, he's so aggressive, and he's not really just like playing the jiu-jitsu game off his back, looking for submissions, kind of creating scrambles and jumping on somebody's back. I mean, he was kind of manhandling Chandler at times in this fight, and that's not easy to do. Like, we know Chandler is obviously a collegiate wrestler with a lot of strength, and Charles was really kind of just walking forward and putting him where he wanted him. So I think maybe you're seeing some evolution in Oliveira for that reason, that he wants to be a little bit more of a physical style the next time he runs into Islam. And I do. Sometimes these guys are like, oh, that wasn't me out there. I had a really, really off night. And sometimes it sounds like an excuse, and sometimes it's real. And I do think that Charles had an off night when he fought Islam. Now, that doesn't mean I'd pick him. I think he's going to be an underdog, rightfully so, when he fights Islam again, if he fights Islam again. But I do think he had an off night. And so even though stylistically that's always going to be a tough fight for Charles, like, Charles has proven that he can win as an underdog, and I think he would put up a better performance against Islam if they were to fight again.
Yeah, very nicely said, man. I got to ask, Brett, where are you taking us? Are too many women trying to get photos with you by the elevator or something? What's happening here?
No, we're the ESPN crew is cleaning up our set. That's like this is where we shoot all the post shows and everything.
Oh, beautiful.
And I have clothes over here. I have a suit jacket somewhere around here that I need to find before they pack it up. There it is.
Listen, Brett, we all know it's a thong, and that's okay because it's more comfortable to commentate with that kind of stuff. Hey, listen, before I let you go, last question for me, right? Bo Nickal, right? He came out there under a lot of expectation from fans with his Paul Craig fight, and he chose to show everybody a different side of his game. He didn't go for one takedown. Afterwards, the fans booed him, but he said he kind of dominated the fight. Watching the fight, though, Paul Craig had not a lot of success, but he had some success. And maybe it wasn't as dominant as what Bo said it was. What's your reaction to the performance that he chose to show? Is it a situation where he's just trying to get the experience in another area of his game? And do you think he made a mistake by not trying to focus in on his strength and potentially finishing Paul Craig tonight at UFC 309?
No, I don't. And I must have a very, very different take on this fight than everybody else. And so maybe when I watch it back, I'll be like, oh man, I really embarrassed myself on submission radio because I said something that I don't even agree with. But I thought that this fight was Paul Craig's fault. I mean, how can I sit here and criticize Bo Nickal for winning a fight 30-27? I mean, what is he now? This is his 7th pro fight, and he fought a guy who's ranked 15th in the division, who's known as a grappler, and he was winning the exchanges so much to the point that he won every round. I don't think Paul Craig really did anything that threatened winning the fight. I think he was just there. Like, I didn't really see a lot of punches being thrown by Paul Craig that had knockout power. I didn't really see a lot of combinations thrown by Paul Craig that were going to win him this fight. I saw him kind of catering to the crowd and maybe taunting Bo Nickal when he was down on every scorecard. If you're Bo, this is your 7th pro fight. You're in a fight in which you don't want to necessarily go to the ground with this guy because that is his strongest way to victory. And you're still learning the craft of standing up. So he was standing up, which is not his strength, and he still won every round against a top 15 guy with 3-4 times as many fights as him. I thought that it was a fine performance by Bo. I thought that we got to see the worst part of his game for 15 minutes and he won 30-27. So I thought it was fine. It didn't bother me at all. Like, I think that this guy still needs to fight a few more times and a couple more years before he's on the level of the middleweight. I think that we probably got too excited because that's what we do in this sport, you know, but I think he's on pace, man. And I think that there was nothing wrong with his performance whatsoever. Did it blow my socks off? And am I saying, yeah, let's see him fight a top 5 guy? Well, of course not, but he's on pace with where he needs to be, you know, and let's not forget how dominant his wrestling can still be. So we didn't see it at all tonight, and that's okay. Like, I got to see that Bo Nickal can strike a little bit. And he did hit Paul with some big punches that seemed to bother Paul, to the point that Paul, I think, again, didn't really show a lot of desire to win that fight, you know? So I'm not going to criticize Bo Nickal's performance at all.
What do you think should be next for him? If you could pick someone, you don't want to give him someone too difficult, but you've got to give him someone with above Paul Craig, right? So who do you think would be good for a Bo next?
I don't have the rankings in front of me, but I would just go down the list. If he just beat 15, who's 14? Who's 13? Who's 12? Who's 11? I mean, he is like an anomaly, and he's a tough guy to almost matchmake because he is so good that he can win fights in the top 15, but he's also so raw that he might look really bad at times doing it. So I would just kind of continue to move him up the rankings as slowly as possible. And yeah, I think after 2-3 more fights, maybe 1 year, 1.5 years, he's going to look a lot better than he did tonight. But yeah, I mean, for this to be the first fight in which we really saw an extended amount of his striking and he won every round, and for people to be booing him and saying he's overrated, he didn't try one single takedown, you know? It's like it'd be like Alex Pereira coming out and wrestling the entire time. Oh, he's not very good. I don't know. I really thought that the narrative on Bo's fight was different. Again, I'm not saying that the guy looked like a world beater and can go win the title tomorrow, but I putting in context where he's at in his career, I thought he looked fine. I thought he looked good.
All right, man. Well, look, I'm going to let you find your clothes in the back there. I appreciate you joining me, guys. Make sure to follow Brett on social media. And of course, dude, what's coming up? I love your interviews. I love when you do interviews on the ESPN MMA channel. Any big interviews coming up that people can look out for? I love the work that you did with Francis when you went over there. That was really cool.
I mean, obviously the Francis one was crazy going to camera.
Great Drickus interview recently too.
Yeah, Dracus was fun to talk to. I mean, I think the ones I want to talk to now are sort of now that we know what's going to happen at the pay-per-view, the UFC 310. I would like to talk to Ian Gary. I think that's a really, really interesting fight between him and Shavkat. I know that some of the steam's been kind of taken away from some of these matchups at welterweight because they changed. But that Shavkat Ian Gary fight, I think, is pretty darn interesting, man. Ian has looked very, very good, and he's buttoned up, and I think he's a smart fighter. And Shavkat has obviously looked like a world beater, and he's going to be favored in that one. But I do think that that's a more interesting fight than it kind of appears on the surface at quick glance. So I'm pretty excited about that one. So maybe I'll try to get a hold of those two guys here pretty soon.
Exciting stuff, man. Brett, thank you so much, dude. Thanks for joining me on Submission Radio. What an honor and pleasure it was to speak to you again.